to agree with one another all of the time. In fact, in a democracy, we shouldn't. Let me say that one more time. We do not all need to agree with one another all of the time. Our republic, our state, our city only functions if we're able to balance the will of the majority with the rights of the individual. In a perfect world, we do this by sharing our political opinions, having debates, going to the ballot box, accepting the results of those elections, and getting down to the business of governing. Alas, our world is not perfect. There's evidence that democracy is backsliding, both here in the United States and abroad. There's a growing fondness for authoritarianism. Most terrifying to me is the growing rhetoric around, and at times even acceptance of, political violence. We didn't get here because of one individual, because of one political movement, or because of one political party. In a democracy, government is us. We're at this moment because of a steady decline in civic engagement, trust in institutions, and frankly, trust in one another. So I teach public administration for a living. For the past 11 years, I've had the privilege of being a professor, a department chair, and teaching hundreds of students that have gone on to be leaders in state and local government. That field, public administration, is founded on this idea that politics decides and administration does. That political phase is where we sort out what I call the universal governing challenge. Needs are infinite, resources are finite, and values are contested. So that means no matter what we do politically, there's going to be some people that feel like their needs are not being met. There's going to be some people who feel like their values are not represented by those currently holding office. But that's life in a pluralistic society. In a functioning democratic government, there will be no total political victories, nor permanent ones. Democracy is not meant to be perfect. Why? Well, what's perfect for me is not perfect for you. What's perfect for downtown is not perfect for the neighborhoods. What's perfect for a Republican is not perfect for a Democrat. And you know what? That's okay. That tension is the lifeblood of governing. That creates a marketplace of ideas where good ideas gain traction and become policy. Bad ideas get discredited and become, dismissed to the ash bin of history. That tension moves our society forward. That is the politics of governing. That is when politics is used as a tool to govern. In theory, right? Unfortunately, over the past 10, 20, 30, 40 years, we've seen a shift from the politics of governing to what I call the politics of winning. In the politics of winning, we care about winning the day. We care about winning the argument. We care about winning the debate. Things like facts, honesty, truth, decency, none of that matters. That's secondary. All that matters is winning. I fear that we've created an entire generation of political leaders that only know the politics of winning. Now, the fine people at TEDx discouraged us from using props. So I can't have a giant mirror. So I won't have a giant mirror for you. But I'll hold up like the proverbial mirror to myself. Because I myself am culpable. I've engaged in that groupthink. I've engaged in the politics of winning. So prior to being a professor, I worked for many years as a lobbyist in Madison. I managed a political campaign. I worked on other political campaigns. I worked as the research director at a public policy think tank. And I took comfort in some of that groupthink. I dismissed other people's viewpoints, not because of merit, but because of who they were. I was smart, they were dumb. It felt good. I was an education reform lobbyist. I cared about kids, they didn't. And I spent my time talking to other people who shared my views. I was culpable. I think I said it before, but I'll say it again. Government is us. So in a way, we're all culpable. I think we could all sit back and realize that, hey, I've engaged in that type of groupthink. I've been unserious. I've used the politics of winning. I found comfort there. But let me tell you, it's not serious and it's not governing. And it creates real consequences. The serious work of government requires planning, requires budgeting, requires continuity. All things that don't matter if you're just trying to win in the moment. And when our government is unable to do those things, we stop meeting the needs of citizens. And when citizen needs aren't met, people naturally start to lose faith. They lose faith in their government, and then eventually faith in democracy itself. And if democracy is us, losing faith in democracy means losing faith in one another. That's not good. If this sounds dire and depressing, I apologize. And thank you. No, we're not supposed to say thank you, so I won't say thank you. I have hope. I do have hope, because if the problem is us, the solution's pretty obvious. The solution is us. So where do we go? Whenever I start talking like this, friends will come up to me and they'll say, Mike, I know what to do. Term limits. It'll solve everything. Campaign finance reform. And if it's someone I don't know, I'm like, yeah, that might be a good idea. If it's a friend of mine, I say, no. Absolutely not. Absolutely not. A generational, or I guess a problem that's a generation in the making, is going to take a generation to fix. It doesn't mean that those aren't good ideas. It's just not enough. It's going to take a majority of voters, a majority of citizens, committing to those core values of trust, competency, empathy, and concern for the common good. More importantly, it's going to take a majority of voters rewarding leaders and elected officials who share and demonstrate those values. On the other side of that coin, it requires negative consequences for negative behaviors. Let me say that again. It's up to us, citizens, voters, to flip those incentive structures. Now, this sounds a lot like me saying, can't we all just get along? And though I'm a huge proponent of us all getting along, I want to get a little more specific. I think local government is the last best hope for democracy here in the United States. Local politics, think your city council, your school board, these are nonpartisan positions. Now, it doesn't mean that people holding these positions are apolitical. It doesn't mean they don't have ideological preferences. They absolutely do. But unlike state politics and federal politics, the structures of our local government and our local politics are not built around partisanship. That conflict point that is so important in our most difficult ideological and cultural divides is not baked into local government the way it is state and federal. That creates a foundation we can build on. More to the point, as I keep saying, government is us, but local government actually feels like us. Chances are everyone in this room knows somebody who has served in local office, served on a board or commission, works for local government. Human beings tend to trust institutions with which they have direct interactions. Hence, we have higher levels of trust of local government than state and federal government. Once again, we can build on that. and think about the issues that local government deals with. This is a cliche in public administration, so don't give me credit for this. But if you go over on Main Street and you see a pothole, it's not a Democratic pothole or a Republican pothole. It's a pothole that needs to be filled. Everybody hates it. And so many of the things that local government does are those unifying services. Who doesn't want high-performing schools? Who doesn't want safe drinking water? Who doesn't want a safe community? If we can start to build trust with one another by coalescing around those issues, maybe, just maybe, when we get to those stickier issues, those cultural and ideological divides, we can build on that foundation of trust. It doesn't mean that we'll be in agreement on those more difficult issues. We won't be. But we can trust one another's intent. That's progress. That's real. And it's not abstract. If you go look at the bios of our state legislature, many of those folks have a background in local politics. So if we can start to reward our local elected officials today for engaging in the politics of governing, that can bubble up to the state level. That can bubble up to the federal level. Yes, it'll take a generation, but we can get there. And I take comfort in the fact that this wouldn't be the first time that local government has shown us the way. So many of the reforms in our government over the past 150 years have their roots at the local level. Things like budgeting transparency, merit-based hiring, open meetings and open records. These are all reforms that started in local government. Local government has historically been the laboratory for good government reform. We've done it before, and we can do it again. The alternative, where we allow our politics to degrade into this winner-take-all blood sport, is a path to nowhere. It's a path to us losing faith in our government. It's a path to our needs not being met, and ultimately a path to us losing faith in one another. So let's build that coalition. Let's build that coalition dedicated to those core values of trust, competency, empathy, and concern for the common good. Let's recommit to governing.